Hello and welcome to my review of Neptunia X Senran Kagura Ninja Wars. All the gameplay in this video was captured on a PlayStation 5 console, but in general the game is currently a PS4 exclusive. And remember, if you do enjoy this video or find it useful, I'd really appreciate it if you'd consider subscribing to the channel. It makes a huge difference and it really does help smaller channels like mine to get noticed. So with that out of the way, what's this game all about? Well, it's a third-person action RPG which acts as a special crossover between two separate franchises, those being the Neptunia series and the Senran Kagura series. Both of these games are generally thought of as PlayStation titles, but some games from both series have appeared on Xbox, Nintendo Switch and PC. The Neptunia games are usually turn-based JRPGs, although they do have some spin-offs that play like action RPGs, while Senran Kagura games on the other hand are usually third-person action RPGs with some random spin-offs including a third-person shooter with water guns, a pinball game, and a cooking rhythm game. Both of these series normally feature a good amount of spicy anime fan service, but while Neptunia often features it, Senran Kagura revels in it. Either way, it's something that I'm always happy to see, so, make of that what you will. Ninja Wars itself seems to be a little bit light on the fan service, but at the same time, it doesn't seem to have been censored in any way. I think this is just how it was developed, possibly to appeal to a wider market. How you feel about that, I suppose, is up to you. But personally, I'd like these games to stay niche but profitable, rather than widely popular and slightly more profitable. As I mentioned, this game brings together Neptunia and Senran Kagura, but plays exclusively as a third-person action RPG. It's essentially a dungeon crawler where you pick a level to play, hack and slash your way through that level while completing some basic objectives, then rinse and repeat. Of course, there is a bit more to the game than that, so let's go through it now. As usual, I won't be spoiling the story, but I will give you the initial setup. The game's set in a fictional world called Game Industry, which is usually where the Neptunia games take place. However, this time round, the geography of the world is a bit different and looks like a giant shuriken or ninja star. As far as I can tell, this is simply due to the game being a crossover, and nothing that happens in this game is canonical to either series in any way. Within this world, there are two main territories. One has mastered the Compa ninja style, while the other has mastered the Honeypa ninja style. The two sides have been fighting for supremacy for a long time and are locked in what is essentially a stalemate. One side is comprised of the Neptunia girls, and the other side is, of course, the Senran girls. Neither side seems to be able to get the upper hand, and one day during a battle between the two, they're interrupted by a mechanical ninja army led by a strong ninja who's mastered the headshot style, and the story basically continues from there. Gameplay-wise, at the beginning of the game you'll be introduced to a hub menu that allows you to access all of the game's features. At first you'll only have three options, which are the Shinobi base, where you can organize your characters and change their equipment, the market, where you can use gold acquired during missions to buy various items, and the Nin Chat, which gives you a selection of characters to chat with. Some will give you items, some will give you side quests, some will give you an event scene, while some will just be a small bit of dialogue. Once you arrive on this screen, you'll be given a short tutorial on how to use them all before being sent out on your first mission. After a short time, you'll unlock more options on the hub menu, like the Komotsu Shrine, where you can take on various side missions to earn extra XP, items, and equipment for your characters. You'll also get access to the P&C meditation minigame, where you can use the gyroscope inside the PS4 or PS5 controller to balance your chosen character on top of a giant peach. Succeeding in this minigame gives you items and also various buffs like extra HP that last for a specific amount of missions. There's 3 difficulty levels, and as you might expect, the higher difficulties reward you with better items and buffs that last longer. Each mission in the game is relatively basic and generally has you fighting to the end of a level to beat a boss, or killing a certain amount of specific enemies, or perhaps collecting items within a time limit. From very early on, you can play as a total of 8 girls, 4 from Neptunia and 4 from Senran, but there are some special characters to unlock as well. You can take any combination of 2 girls into battle, and each girl can gain XP and level up. This of course makes them stronger and unlocks new ninja arts, which are skills that you can use in battle by holding down a shoulder button and pressing the appropriate face button. You can also equip each character with various items like shuriken, kunai, health recovery items, and charms that do things like revive you if you die. As you play through the game, you'll also acquire spirit stones, which you can equip to your characters in this special grid that you can see here. These stones give stat increases like extra XP, more health, or more attack power. You can also line up spirit stones of the same type to increase the overall potency. The combat itself is of the hack and slash variety. You can perform a simple attack combo by pressing a single button, you'll have access to a dodge, which does have invincibility frames, and you can guard against enemy attacks. You can also lock onto enemies to make targeting them a little bit easier easier while you throw your shurikens and kunai, and you can also use your ninja arts. The ninja arts are 4 skills that you equip to your characters at the shinobi base, which means you can choose which skills are assigned to which button. To use these skills, you need to use up a certain amount of the segmented blue bar at the bottom of the screen. Stronger attacks will use more segments, and you can either wait for them to slowly recover or use your basic attacks to hit enemies and recover them faster. And so I think that about does it for how the game works, so let's get into some personal opinions. So what did I like about the game? Well, firstly, let me start off by saying that I thought the intro to the game, or more accurately the opening song, was brilliant. It would have been better if it had more actual animation in it instead of just still images, but it's pretty cool nonetheless. Plus, I think the music itself is pretty good. It's that kinda Japanese pop rock music that you see and hear in a lot of anime openings, but even though it's relatively common, I still quite like it, and I also think it's really appropriate for this kind of game. Another thing that really stood out to me was the artwork of the characters. It's not really a surprise though, the artwork for Senran and Neptunia is always top notch, at least as far as my tastes go. Although if I'm not mistaken, the Neptunia girls' battle transformations in this game are exclusive to this game. Obviously I know that they do a transformation sequence in the Neptunia games themselves. As you can see here, this is the main character Neptune, who seems to sort of age as she transforms, but I think the ninja forms they have in this game are actually exclusive and not seen anywhere else. I could be mistaken on that, but I think that's the case. Either way, I personally think they look awesome and I really do love the designs. The Senran girls look basically the same as they always do in their own games, which is fine. I mean, I already like how they look anyway, and to be honest, I love all the girls. I just wish there was more you could do with them. And yes, that does sound wrong, but you get what I mean. But yeah, there wasn't really too much else with this game that stood out to me in a overly positive way. It's weird because I like most of the game, it just doesn't stand out. It's just all decent, you know? As an example, the combat can be quite fun and the ninja art skills are fun to use, but it isn't amazing, if you see what I mean. It's just good, like the vast majority of the game. I mean, performance-wise, it ran absolutely fine and I had 0 crashes or bugs to speak of. But I guess with that said, let's talk about some of the stuff I didn't like. Full disclosure, I am a big fan of the Senran Kagura games and I do generally like the fan service genre of anime. I really have no issue with spicy anime girls that are made to be looked at. You know, I've said it before, they aren't real, right? And the idea that playing these games somehow turns people into deviants is frankly absurd. I mean, I was a deviant long before I played these games. I'm joking, of course, kinda. But no, being serious, you know, this kind of thing isn't a problem, you know, and I think this kind of thing is perfectly okay to exist. Perhaps you feel differently, but at least now you know where I'm coming from. So with that in mind, I haven't played many of the Neptunia games and I'm not as familiar with them as I am with Senran. I bought this mainly on the Senran name and I expected it to be quite similar to their past outings. It's only really similar in the sense that it's primarily a hack and slash action RPG with anime girls in it. There really isn't much fan service stuff except for some of the still artwork, and I guess that meditation minigame would count, but there really isn't any of the costume changes or visible accessories except for I guess a couple of color swaps. I mean, sure, that stuff not being there isn't, you know, the biggest deal in the world, but I mean, it is kind of what they're known for, you know? I've heard that it was purposefully designed this way to be much less spicy from the very beginning, which is a bit of a worrying trend regarding anime games. I guess that's one way to avoid censorship, right? Just don't put anything in the game that will get censored in the first place. It's just a bit of a slippery slope if you ask me. Another thing I wasn't too keen on was the character's movement. I think the combat felt good most of the time, but there is just that small amount of jankiness. I mean, they aren't big budget AAA games, so there's always going to be some level of that, and that's fine. But if you're a fan of these games, I suppose you already understand what I mean. It just feels a little bit off sometimes, and it's not exactly as responsive as you'd want it to be. So I thought it was worth mentioning, but honestly, it's really not that bad. The game is also pretty short. I completed the main story and a lot of the side missions in around 13 to 15 hours of play. There is some endgame content, and like a lot of Japanese RPGs, there's a good bit of grinding to get into, but I personally didn't find it all that interesting. I should also say that these kind of games tend to carry a AAA price for what is generally a mid-range game, and I don't mean that in a nasty way. The majority of the time I play mid-range or indie games over AAA games anyway. I find that I discover much more interesting and creative games that way, and of course I don't mind the odd big game here and there, but yeah, there's definitely a limit to those. Lastly, I found the story to be really quite dull in this one. I mean, I don't know what I was expecting, to be honest. I didn't expect a, masterpiece of storytelling, but the narrative really did lose me early on because I just didn't find it interesting. I'm sure some people will be into it, and I usually am, but this one just didn't do it for me for whatever reason. There's a lot of the standard character banter as well, which is fine, you know, it's a staple of these kind of games, but I do think it goes on for way too long. I suppose because the game isn't canon and because it's a crossover, I was expecting something a bit more, you know, wild and out there, but it's just a bit tame. Not bad, mind you, just tame in both story and fan service. Other than that though, most of the game is either decent or pretty good, so let's just move on to the conclusion. In my opinion, Neptunia X Senran Kagura Ninja Wars is a decent game. I don't think it does enough in some key areas to make it really memorable or interesting for long-term fans, but overall, it's a solid video game. Would I recommend it to people though? Well, I think if you're a big fan of either series already, then that alone will probably see you through and cause you to buy the game. However, I think you just need to know that it's very light on the things that fans generally buy these games for, so you may end up being a little bit disappointed like I was. Ultimately, I think long-term fans will probably buy this anyway, and they'll have a good time with it, although they may be a little bit let down by it. If you're not really into the Neptunia or Senran games, I really don't think this has enough going for it to bring you into the series, and it doesn't really showcase the best features from either franchise. Don't get me wrong, it's not a bad game by any means, it's perfectly enjoyable and perfectly playable. The combat can be fun and the characters look great, but it simply doesn't capitalize on the features that make these games stand out. And sadly, to me, it just comes across as watered down and sanitized. So there you go, that's my review of Neptunia X Senran Kagura Ninja Wars. It's available right now exclusively on PlayStation 4, but you can of course play it on a PS5 via backwards compatibility. If you have any questions or perhaps there was something I missed that you'd like to know about, please feel free to leave a comment and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you enjoyed the video or found it useful, I hope today will be the day that I earn your subscription, and if you want to support the channel even further, all the important links are in the video description down below. But with all that said, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.